everyone. Welcome back to Female Founderhood Podcast. This is where any of you can eavesdrop on two female founders having a chat about the blood, sweat, and tears. Because guess what? Life, especially as a founder, is not like your Instagram highlight reel. It's actually there's ups and downs. There's a lot more after you thought you were down, and then something happened, and then you go found a new level of bottom. But that is why we're here. We want to show you that you're not alone, you're not crazy, you're doing just fine. So I'm Rebecca. I founded Upgrading Women, which is a marketing agency for women in tech. And now I'm talking with Nicola Mercer, and she is a transformational health coach. And she used to work for Nike. So I want to know a bit more about Nicola. Nicola, what did you want to be when you grew up?
Oh, that's a great question, Rebecca. I actually wanted to be a teacher, and I had my place at university to do primary school teaching. But I'd done some volunteering work at a local school whilst I was at college. And when I got my A-level results, and it was 2-3 weeks maybe before the start of university, I suddenly thought, I don't want to be a teacher. When I'd done the volunteering, the noise in the classroom of all of those like 5-6-year-olds, it was just incredible. And I thought, do I really want to go into a school for the rest of my life? Do I want to be amongst all of that noise and mayhem and taking children to the toilet and everything? So very last minute, I decided to ditch the teaching course and opted for business because I had no idea what I was going to do and thought business was probably, casting a wider net to be able to do whatever I might want to do 3 or 4 years down the line.
So more versatile. But I have to say, I always wanted to be a teacher too, since I was a kid. And I was an only child. And I had a nanny. So my poor nanny, I had to sit her down. Okay, now listen to me. I'm teaching, all right? So that's part of the role play is for me to teach. But
Yeah.
so you went to business school. So what happened after? You also went and become a cabin crew with Virgin Atlantic. So tell me, how did that happen?
So I can honestly say that I've always been someone who hasn't had ambition. And when I say that, and hopefully this will come through more in my story, I mean, in the typical sense of, someone, I really want to be a doctor. I'm called to being in the medical profession and helping people, or someone who wants to be a teacher, for example. I didn't really have ambition to be a certain something and to achieve a certain level of something in a career. So when I went to business school, I stayed living at home with my parents because they couldn't afford for me to move elsewhere in the country. And I had a bit of a mixed experience at uni because I worked part-time in a pretty normal job in a call centre. It wasn't the typical student type job. I worked in a pub as well, actually. I multitasked. I did uni, I did a call centre job for an insurance company, and I did a bar staff job as well. So I was still not decided on what I wanted to do when I approached finishing uni. Like I say, the teaching career had, got well and truly dropped 3 years before. And the only thing I probably had ever been interested in was travel. My dad used to be in the Navy, and he used to share lots of stories, which are a family joke, about everywhere he's been and seen. And I was fascinated by those stories, and I really loved aeroplanes. I'd only been on an aeroplane twice before I went to university, because we didn't have those kinds of holidays. One of those was with the school. But I loved aeroplanes and I loved travel, and I just wanted the opportunity to kind of take a year out, but again didn't have the money to go backpacking around Europe or Asia or wherever, you know, backpackers went when they left uni. So I thought, right, I'm going to apply to be cabin crew and use that as a way to basically take a gap year and travel. So I started to work for Virgin Atlantic fresh out of university, did all of the North American routes, which was great fun. Definitely not the job for me, you know, bending down, putting all of those used meal trays into a cart at 3 o'clock in the morning on a night flight back from Los Angeles definitely wasn't the career that I saw for myself. So yeah, I just took it as a way to travel. And then I did stay in the travel industry when I left Virgin, working for Continental Airlines, doing all of their pricing and fares, working with different corporates and agencies. Back then it was a very different travel model to what we've got now.
Wow. And this is going to be the question that everybody must have asked you. Did you or did you not join the Mile High Club?
Oh God, definitely not. No, I definitely did have passengers who did.
Ooh,
I always remember
you,
one.
you,
Yeah,
you like,
there was one flight where. Oh yeah. There was one flight where some of the passengers had reported them, and so yeah, we had to knock, and you could easily open the door from the outside. You just put your pen in the little, you know,
yeah,
occupied
yeah,
thing
yeah.
and slid it down. And then when they came out, everybody applauded them. It was hilarious. Like the whole, you know, plane, a 747 jumbo jet, was just clapping this couple who decided to take themselves into the toilet. And the toilets, even if you were in upper class, weren't very nice. So yeah,
No.
but it wasn't for me.
I think because you know how the sausage is made, you kind of don't want to be in the kitchen.
Definitely not.
So, and then how did you land your literal lifelong career in Nike? Tell me about that.
So I'd moved away from the northeast, which is where I'm from in England, and lived in the south around Gatwick Airport. So like I said, I'd spent a few years working in the airline industry, and I missed the northeast, and I wanted to come back home. And I was looking for a job to stay in travel, especially in the airline industry, but I just couldn't get anything here around Newcastle. So I came back, did some temp work, and was with an agency who reached out and said, "We've got this job with Nike. This is the job description." And honestly, I read it and it was like reading another language. I had no idea what this job was. I went for the interview. I got a second interview, still had no idea what the hell I was being recruited for. Got this job and realized that Nike have their own language. They have all of these
Jargon.
abbreviations and acronyms, and yeah, just everything was in their language in this job description. So yeah, I started and felt like a bit of a misfit, if I'm honest. I wasn't somebody who was athletic, had grown up with sports, wasn't on team sports and so on. And I started, and within the first couple of weeks, I just questioned why I was there and how I fit in, because everyone was taking their bag down to the gym at lunchtime and going out for a run, and you know, on the treadmill or doing the exercise class and talking about football and hockey and tennis and golf. And I just felt like like I'd done the wrong thing completely. And it was hard actually for a few months, very different to the type of corporate I'd been in just outside of London. So yeah, that was the start though of what became a 20-year career at Nike.
Crazy. So you started in the sales department.
No, actually, I started in one of the support functions, which was linked to sales, but I was there to support the sales team basically with product samples. But this is a long time ago. This was 2001. And so we used to have printed price lists and
Yes.
brochures. And basically, the sales team were going into sports retailers
Right.
to sell the product to them. You know, we were the wholesale part of Nike. So I was their support person, coordinating all of the tools, the budget that we spent on them, trying to recoup the samples that were used to be sold with, which was very difficult and controversial because up until I'd started work, those samples could just go wherever they wanted to go, and suddenly, I'm there saying we need to get them back and we need to count the money back and recoup our losses and mitigate the risk there. So it was a great job. But I did that for a couple of years, and then I moved into operations, and again still all connected to sales, but focusing on the whole supply chain process from end to end, working with the people who develop product, who source the product, the factories, to the logistics, and making sure that we had everything right so that we delivered that product. So say, most obvious example is Chelsea launched their new football kit, and we'd need to make sure that Sports Direct here in the UK had those Chelsea kits on sale on the launch day for Chelsea. So I was responsible for the teams who managed that from an order management point of view, and everything with the customer's warehouse and delivery process. It's really interesting. And then I moved into sales for the last 7 years that I was there.
Wow. So how did you, I guess you must have coached yourself from a job that you didn't, from more, not just the job, but the organizational culture that is very sporty and not very you. How did you coach yourself into a 20-year-old stint and work your way up to the top? And this is something that I would never hear any Gen Z would ever have any 20 year long stint. So yeah, how did you do it in terms of your mindset?
It was hard, because when I was 19, I went off to America to do some au pairing over the summer. And when I came back, I started to suffer with panic attacks and anxiety. And this was in 1995. And there was no talk of mental health. Even anxiety wasn't a word that was used like it is today. And I struggled with that, and still do have to support myself, because I do have generalized anxiety disorder. And when I started at Nike, it was part of who I was, but I didn't understand it. I was searching for a fix. I thought there was something wrong with me. I felt flawed, somehow inferior and abnormal. I used a lot of derogatory words about myself to myself. And so I had very low confidence and low self-esteem. And although I was at Nike for 20 years and moved through careers, I did a lot of side stepping rather than upward stepping. I progressed in terms of skill set and responsibility, but I held myself back from actually climbing that corporate ladder. And I mentioned at the start about never having ambition. Like, I didn't see myself as an ambitious person, because I didn't want to progress upwards too much, because I didn't want to increase that risk of being found out, because I thought I was flawed and that I was going to be discovered. It was imposter syndrome combined with the anxiety and mental health challenges that I had. So I had to support myself massively, because I couldn't let anybody find out about who I really was. So I did a lot of stuff personally, and that's why I've ended up where I am now, which we can come on to, because I've spent, well, at this point, 28 years, but, I was at Nike, and all of those years I was doing personal development. I was going to see a Reiki healer, which Reiki wasn't a thing back then. I was going to a spiritualist church, seeing a hypnotherapist, having counselling, having CBT, trying all of these things to fix me so that I could turn up at work every day. But two things. First is, I never grasped the damage it was doing by hiding how I felt, because I was staying in that fight or flight state constantly, trying to hide it, trying to perform when that wasn't really how I felt I could be. So that was actually making my challenges in mental health much worse. Secondly, I thought I was very weak, and, like I say, used lots of derogatory words to describe how I thought I was. But it took many, many years to realise that I was actually the opposite, that I was very strong because of what I did manage to achieve and how I did manage to grow and develop and build a career with a great salary and have a family and, you know, achieve things in my personal life. I didn't see that. I just saw all of the faults. And that was because I had a very negative, fixed mindset almost. But at the same time, I was moving forward, but not in a positive way. I was just surviving, essentially.
Mhm.
But I was strong to be able to do it for all of those years because I was very respected. I was a great manager and mentor and team leader to many people. And I was, you know, a big part of Nike's culture here in the UK because of the service length that I had. You know,
Yeah.
you're right. Not many Gen Z people are going to hang around at a company for 20 years, but we had people who'd been there 30, 35 years. That was the kind of company it was. And so I had a lot of respect because of what I was capable of in the practical sense. So when people started to hear what I had been struggling with, it was a big surprise for them. So a lot of self-support,
Mhm.
a lot of survival mode tactics, which I now know are definitely not the right approach.
Not sustainable. So, what would you advise
Yeah.
now for those listening who are doing exactly what you used to do to a point to their own detriment? Or at the same time as well, what would you say now to your, 20, 25-year-old self, knowing what you know now?
Yeah, thankfully the world's a very different place. I know there's a lot of progress still to be made, but we are much more accepting of diversity, of different health challenges. So I would say to speak out, to be open. And the first step of that being open is with yourself, to speak to yourself about what's going on and explore, like be curious about, well, how am I really feeling? How is this playing out? How is this impacting my life? Is this something that is a temporary thing because of a certain situation or challenge, or is this something bigger? And get really curious with it, because I hear a lot of people talk about being anxious, and I'm not saying that they aren't anxious, but I think it's become a term that's very widely used now. And so really explore and know what you're feeling. Is what you're feeling normal human response to a stressful situation and something that you can learn to manage through techniques? Or is this an abnormal response, like in my case, where I was catastrophizing and worrying about dying every single day? So that would be
What?
the first thing, like be open with yourself and really understand and explore it. But then be open with others, to speak, to get help, ask for
Yeah.
support. Don't feel that it's going to make you inferior or
Mhm.
less of a performer and contributor and team member at work, which were the thoughts that I had, is to speak out and to be open. And the thing that I wish I'd done, which is what I would give this advice for now, is to know that if there are things you aren't able to do, not because you're resisting that growth and development, but because it is harmful to your health, then speak out about those. And know that it's okay to not stand on a stage in front of 100 people, but that when you're in a room with 10 people and you're facilitating that meeting and you're doing an excellent job at it, that's great. But I felt as though you had to be everything because I saw everybody else apparently being everything. And
Mhm.
I think we put a lot of pressure on ourselves to do it all and to think that you've got to be that everything to be successful. And so I would say,
Yeah.
accept that you've got strengths and you've got weaknesses, and maybe some of those weaknesses are things that are health related. And it's, you know, if it's just you, oh, I don't want to do that because I don't like speaking to people, but that's something you could learn to grow and change
Mhm.
and get better at. You know, that's different to being, actually, if I stand on that stage, I may end up having an extreme anxiety or panic attack, which puts me into hospital. Do you know that there's a difference there? So be open and accept that there's things you will be very good at and things that you may need to work on or simply avoid, whilst perhaps aside to that you do some kind of therapy and counselling to support yourself.
Wow. Did you really feel you were so afraid that you were going to die every day?
Yeah, I was the kind of anxiety that I struggle with is this
Mhm.
catastrophizing type, and it's health, which is very ironic because I'm in health now. Yeah, I
Exactly.
had this massive fear of death. Yeah, and I was frightened that if I was asked to speak in a room and my heart was racing that much that I would have a heart attack and die, that I would choke on something I was eating and die, that yeah, I just thought about if I went to sleep,
Scenarios.
you know, yeah, it's lots of different scenarios. I just thought, I just feared that something would cause the end for me and that my heart was going to stop. And yeah, I've ended up in hospital on more than one occasion, truly believing that I was on the verge of death. Very scary.
Wow.
Yeah.
No, that catastrophizing, I'm so familiar with that. People
Mm.
around me do have that to a point like if there's any movement that is a bit rushed, and then everybody's like, oh my god, are we gonna be late, are we gonna be get punished because we're late, and so on and so forth. So I absolutely empathize with that. And was that also that those experiences that you had, would you say that helped you to become um the transformational health coach that you are now?
Yeah, absolutely. Because I hadn't realised that I'd been on that wellness journey for 27 years.
Mhm.
I was made redundant from Nike. And up to that point, I'd always been learning new things, trying to find that fix, trying to find a way to be this confident person who didn't wake up and have those thoughts straight off and so on through the day. So yeah, I'd been on a very, very long journey of learning and development and interest in it all. That was the big thing. Because a few years before I was made redundant, I kind of switched my life up a bit or quite a bit when it came to how I ate and exercised. And I
Mhm.
started to feel very different because of that. And although I didn't suddenly fix the confidence and those anxious, catastrophizing kinds of thoughts and beliefs, I was in a better place. And I learned through those new habits and understanding of how your body works about how you could start to feel better. And so when the redundancy started to be spoken about at work and I started to realize I was going to be impacted and wonder what to do next,
Mm.
I'd had a couple of quite big life events happen along
Mhm.
with COVID and the pandemic, like everyone else. And I'd started to think, I can't go back to how it was pre-COVID. I can't go back
Mhm.
to feeling as stressed as I do in my job with the
Mm.
face-to-face contact and exposure to having to public speak and I was at a point where actually my career was starting to step up and there were new opportunities and I was frightened by it. And at the same point with those thoughts, it was kind of like, this shit's happened in my life. This pandemic has made pretty much everyone reassess their life and how fragile our lives and world is. Big, I know, but it was, we were hit with that. And I thought, God, I've got to do something else. I was 45, so maybe even past midlife. I've been at Nike 20 years. I'm losing my job. I've
Mm.
lived the way I have on the edge, literally like a nervous wreck for
Yeah.
27 years. This has to stop. I can't keep going on like this. And I didn't know what the answer was.
Mm.
But then I put the pieces together of everyone comes to you for advice on their diet, exercise, their health. People see you as an advocate. They didn't know what was going on up here, obviously. But I was an expert and I learned a lot from what I did at Nike as well. So it was putting those pieces together to go, actually, God, I need to rescue myself. But I think
Mm.
I'm going to rescue myself by helping other people to not experience what I've experienced. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I think that is a good backstory for a coach, really, because there are so many coach out there that is teaching something that they know in theory to be good or things to be avoided, but you've lived that life. You've lived the ups and downs, the anxiety, the panic attack, the not knowing what's going to happen and being made redundant, which unfortunately has become a very common story in the past 3 years. But that also means that you could be the perfect person that is coaching what you're coaching, because literally you've been there in the corporate world, not knowing what's going to happen, feeling like you're going to get found out. So, what would your advice be? Let's say you work with a client. Tell me, what is it like working with you? What's the first day look like working with Nicola?
So the first day would be looking to your dream. What do you want your life to be like? So I don't start with what is wrong. We don't go there. It's what do you want? How do you want to feel? Why do you want to feel like that? Why is it important that you experience feeling like that in your life? And not just about for you, but for your family or the other people in your life. What impact would that have on others? And why is that important? And really creating this visual movie in your mind of that life you want, and getting really clear on that, because that was what I'd never had. I was just stuck in get through the day, don't die, don't freak out, don't show up people what you really like. I didn't have that dream, when I said about ambition, I didn't really have that for my life, except I knew that I wanted to not feel like that and not get to a point where life became too hard to live. But once I started to build clarity about that vision of my future life, that's when you can then start to go, okay, so why am I not living in a way that's going to create that life? So we start with the possibility, the dream, the desire, the goals, big stuff, deep stuff. I talk about death. I say, if you were lying on your deathbed, what would you want to lie there and go, yeah, I'm pleased that that's how my life was? And what would you, regret if you didn't make happen for yourself? So we really get to the endless potential and possibilities, because we all have that as humans. It doesn't matter where we are in our life, what we've got going on. We can all dream and we can all start to create change to bring us closer to that is our reality. So yeah, first day, lots of dreaming, lots of clarity, lots of emotional stuff about why it matters. This can really, really pull out what has been holding people back, stuff they don't even realize. So it's very deep work, very important to start there and then move on to the, okay, why is it that you aren't living a life that's going to make that happen for you? So use a process that we begin with clarity. We begin with clarity, then control, starting to get clear about those beliefs that are standing in your way. How can we change some of those stories? What would that look like? Through to consistency, which is all about that sustainable habit change, creating a lifestyle that becomes a part of who you are and is, leading you towards that dream every single day.
Wow. And so you mentioned to me before that you work with corporation as well. How have in your practice, in your observation, companies these days, how well do they actually pay attention to the well-being of their employees now?
Good question. It's very mixed, very mixed. You have some companies who are very forward thinking and absolutely get the connection between supporting their employees' well-being and what well-being really means, because that's another challenge, is it can be very narrow for yoga, not that there's anything wrong with those, but they do them very standalone. But you have some companies who absolutely get that it's a full whole person approach. It's about the financial aspects. It's about helping them with understanding diversity and inclusion and mental health and physical health. and then going into things like habit change, like menopause, like neurodiversity, so they cover a whole spectrum of things, as well as the benefits like employee assistance programs or flexible working hours. And, if you are in a place of work physically, providing different areas and zones of, for styles of work and needs that we have from a mental point of view as well. So that's the great companies. But then you have companies who, at the other end of the scale, don't get it. I get responses when I'm outreaching to companies who are just like, oh, we don't have budget for anything like this. They're just not interested. It's like, we're too busy, or we don't have budget. Or a great one that I get, especially when I reach out about menopause, is, or our women are not of that age, which is laughable, because it doesn't matter if you're a woman, man, or don't identify as any gender. You need to know about menopause, because you're either going to go through it yourself, live with someone who goes through it, and work alongside or manage someone that goes through it in some form. 51% of our population are females, so you're going to come into contact with someone. So you have, companies like that. And then you have the other companies in the middle who are hearing that it's important, who know that they should probably do a bit more, who get their staff maybe saying, oh, would love to have something on creating a healthy eating plan, or so on. And they bring people like me in. Often as a tick box type exercise, or maybe as part of a scattergun approach. And so one of the things I try to do is talk to them about that, and talk to them about how they might work with me on a one-off workshop. But I want them to be clear on their strategy around well-being and what that looks like, and helping them, if they need it, to create that more holistic wellness strategy, which is a part of their culture. So that's the key. So you have a whole range, and thankfully a lot of businesses are seeing that value. Like when I started out, coaches who I worked with to help me would say to me, oh, don't talk about employee happiness. They don't give a shit if their employees come to work happy, sad, miserable, whatever. That's not what they're about. It's about profit. But we know now, like, if someone is coming to work and they aren't sleeping, they've got problems in their relationship, they get up and they grab an energy monster drink or whatever, they don't have any lunch because they think, well, I had that drink and a bacon sandwich this morning, I'll miss lunch. And then they go home and the traffic winds them up and they're ratty and they shout at the kids as soon as they get in, or blah, blah, blah. That person is not a productive team member in your team. They may have a lot of skills that they manage to use, but they're not being used in the best way that they can to support and provide, and contribute to your business goals. So when your employees are happy, then they are going to be more productive, which will equal more profitability. But happiness comes from lots of different things. And a great thing is that, again, not every company is starting to say that it's no longer just about the cycle to work scheme or the private healthcare policy or whatever, gym membership. That actually it's about a lot more. It's about giving opportunities to have a menopause clinic or a neurodiversity or a self-carers support, because a lot of people are caring for others outside of work, especially elderly parents. So there's a whole mix. It's like a pick and mix, what would work best for you, your values of your organization, your mission, your team, the culture that you want to create, like the personality of your organization.
Lovely. So in your pitch, normally when you say, hey, wouldn't you think that if your employees are well, in every sense of the word, wouldn't you think that the profit will actually be even better than what you currently have? What kind of objection do they normally say to you if they're still in the mindset of, well, people are just workers?
Yeah, I think those types of people often don't give you a response. It might be, oh, we're not focusing on this right now. Or what they often come back with is, oh, we had a team event recently and we did something, or we've had someone come in and talk about, and they give a topic. Because again, it's the thing, well, that one thing is done, we're ticking done, phew, well-being sorted, next year's budget, we'll do something else. So it's usually objections like that. And how I would go about that is very similar to what we do in any business as an entrepreneur. Is you get more specific on the pain. So it's like,
Yeah.
I think an easier analogy to use is perhaps someone who's classified as obese and they have a really unhealthy diet. There's no underlying medical condition that's affecting the weight that they're carrying, and they're at risk of developing type 2 diabetes, and they've been told that from their doctor. Just saying that to someone isn't enough for them to go, oh, yes, that is it. I know that I could get diabetes. I could have other medical complications because of that, even death. I have to change. You have to connect with them on their pain points. So it could be, the weight that you're carrying and that risk of diabetes is going to mean that your children can't fully experience you being mobile with them and partaking in sports activities, or, something that really connects with them. So it's the same with a business. It's okay, you've done a session on nutrition, for example.
Yeah.
Your team right now are all struggling with mid-afternoon slumps. You don't get engagement in meetings, and that's leading to you having to lose time as a team to hold that meeting again and recover the same ground to get the outcomes you wanted in that first meeting. That is hitting your bottom line by costing you wastage in a process, something like that, where you get really specific into their pain point of why an employee being well, as you said in the whole sentence, matters.
Yeah.
So we know when we say, when you're well, you're much stronger, you're more vibrant, energetic, focused, productive, better at decision making, clarity, we know well means that, but that isn't like that to the people who are buying or would be, the decision makers for the services that I sell.
Yeah, that is quite unfortunate, because at the end of the day, it's those who signs the check that needs to upgrade their mindset first, right? Before anything else. Because again, you can always find the money, you can always find the time if you know it's a priority, right? So
Yeah, exactly. And I think, I was just going to say the world's shifting as well, in that a lot of the Gen Zers are choosing who to be employed by. It's not like when I went for that job back at Nike and I had to take it because there was nothing else, and you felt honoured to be offered a job by a brand like that. Now Gen Zers are like, okay, so what hours do I work? Do I have to work Friday afternoons? Do you have a pool table in the office? Do you offer donuts on a Friday morning? Like they are very clear about what is going to help them to like working somewhere, and they ask for that and want that. So, the world is shifting, and some of the good changes we're having on the back of those shifts mean that businesses are having to rethink about their culture and their strategy when it comes to people. And so some of the bigger companies and more forward-thinking companies are putting people into positions like that who know that stuff, who get why it's so important to represent every employee with different types of training and well-being support and education and so on.
yeah, that's perfect. So I think, and I'm hoping that more employers have this mindset, and also thinking that, hey, there's a new generation of employees, there's a new generation of market. So not only employees, but also market, because now the Gen Z, when they want to choose a product, I mean, literally, you can buy toothpaste from anyone. Why do we need to buy a toothpaste from a company that is so known to be toxic in terms of the workplace, right? So they can really, the next generation can really vote with their money as well. So my last question to you, Nicola, when Nicola is king, what is going to happen in that kingdom?
Oh, good question. It's a similar question sometimes what I say, if I win the lottery, what would I actually do? And what I
Yeah.
would do if I was king is to speak out on some huge public stage, which I can't believe that I even want to do that, because I wouldn't even speak up in a room full of people I knew. But that's how far I've changed and grown. I would speak out about why health is so valuable, why health is that unlock to the successful life you want, why happiness comes when you're in control of your life, when you are intentional about supporting yourself to feel good, to feel the way you want to feel, and be fulfilled, and have energy and vibrancy and vitality. So I'd really want to stand somewhere, have the opportunity to have that message heard. And I suppose if I was king, what I would love is to have a great big almost backing choir behind me of people who have experienced this, a bit like me, who can be those cheerleaders being like, yeah, we're the public, we're the ones that have seen this happen, and this is what life's about. If you haven't got your health, then you have nothing, and health is wealth, essentially, and wealth's not money, wealth's the value of your life, and so we need health. So yeah, I'd want to do that, and if I win the lottery, I'll be buying myself onto that stage to shout about it, because I'm so passionate about it. Yeah.
You win the lottery, you're gonna buy your own kingdom and create a very healthy, well-rounded, loving and kind, what do you call the people, really?
The community, it's a community, I guess, isn't it? Or yeah, I mean, I know we laugh about it, but we are at a very crucial point in our evolution as humans, as the world, because we saw that at COVID, and now we're starting to see some of the reasons why certain people of certain ethnicity groups, age
Yep.
demographics, all different, types of groups passed away in much greater volumes because of what COVID did, when you had those underlying, not necessarily health risks, but even we know certain ethnicities and certain genders and age groups. Yeah. So, we're at that point, not just because of COVID, but that's kind of catapulted us forward, where we know that we've got to start to improve our health, because that younger generation, for the first time in generations, so we're talking a lower life expectancy than us, because of how much our lifestyle has changed. We're sedentary, our nutrition is extremely poor, we have a lot of toxicities in our lives, not just through products, but through mental, health and exposure to what we've got with technology and other things in the world. So yeah, we're at a real turning point where I need to be king and get on that stage.
Yes, absolutely. I will vote for your for leadership. So thank you so much, Nicola, for coming and talking to me. And I share the same prayer that everyone in every kingdom of this universe will grow more healthy, more kind to themselves and each other. Thank you so much.
Oh,
And listeners, if you have a female founder that you would like me to interview, let me know. My email is rebecca@upgradingwomen.com. So see you in the next episode.
thanks, Rebecca.